I'm going to use this one right here. So let's set this up, and I'll explain how we're going to do this. So the project is Improve Health While Traveling. So those of you that have done a lot of traveling like I have, and we're often referred to as, or we call ourselves, road warriors, there are a number of challenges when you travel a lot, and one of them is, keeping your health up. And I know that sometimes when we travel, we tend to take the easy way out when it comes to food. And even sometimes we think, well, I'm not at home, so I can take some liberties while I'm away. Whatever the thinking is, a lot of us that do travel a lot, we end up not taking care of ourselves as well as we should. So this project is about eating fruit while we're traveling in order to preserve our health, improve our health. The sizing possibilities are going to be the same as what we just went over. It will be the modified Fibonacci series of 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 20. And if we take a look at the user stories here, you can see that user story 101 is about eating grapes. 102 is about eating oranges. 103, apples. 104, watermelons. And 105, coconuts. And the notion would be, team, that it might be easier to eat one of those fruits than others, and therefore the amount of effort it would take to eat one versus another would be different. And so if we look at these 5 possibilities here and the modified Fibonacci series values there, I want each of you to pretend that you have been handed a deck of cards. And each of you have a card representing each of these Fibonacci numbers right here. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. Now we're just pretending because we're not in the same room, and I'm not going to ask to see your cards, but what I am going to ask you to do is to chat your idea for the size. So, and let's start with well, let me ask you this, team. Looking at all of these user stories here, can you chat me which one you think would be the easiest fruit to eat? I'm looking at these chats right here, and here's what I'm seeing. You could go ahead and change this to all participants if you wanted. It looks like to me all of us chatted grapes except one chatted apple. And so since we're all on the same page except for one, so we have one outlier. So was that Dale, you favored apple as being the easiest fruit to eat as opposed to grapes. I'm going to unmute you, Dale, and would you explain your thinking to the team as to why you think an apple would be easier to eat than a grape? Because we want to know what your thinking is, Dale.
Okay, yeah, just from the apple standpoint, it's easier if I'm traveling through an airport or traveling or something like that. It's easier for me to slip an apple into a bag and take that apple with me as opposed to grapes, where if I'm taking grapes with me, I have to have like some sort of container to put them in so they're not going to get smushed and stuff like that. So when I get on the airplane or if I get to the hotel room, they're not going to be all smushed up. With an apple, it's a lot easier. I can just throw it in a little Ziploc bag, throw it in my case, and take it along with me.
Okay, so that was really good. I'm going to go ahead and mute you again, Dale. So, team, you heard Dale's explanation. Does that change anybody's opinion? And so let's just do another round here. Who here still thinks that it's grapes, or does anybody think it should be apples? Okay, team, you're watching the chat box, right? You're seeing a few things here. A question here. I assume it's seedless grapes. Okay, so now let me jump in here, and I'm playing the role of the Scrum Master here, and I'm going to actually wear two hats here. I'm also going to be the product owner. And so we're in our planning meeting, and I say to the product owner, hey, product owner, it looks to me like the team is looking at either apples or grapes as being the smallest sized user story in the product backlog. And I'm wondering if maybe we don't fully understand the user stories and how they work. Would you mind just explaining what your thoughts are when it comes to, eating fruit when we're traveling? So the product owner says this. Okay, yes, I can see that maybe I wasn't clear enough when I was writing these user stories, so let me see if I can assist here. What I mean is that when you're traveling, what fruit would you like to have either delivered to or already available in your room? So it's not an issue of traveling with grapes or apples, it's you're in your room and the hotel has provided you with fruit. So you're in your room and you're going to eat either grapes or apples. What you would want to do is then look at it from that point of view and say which would be the easiest of those fruits to eat. Okay, thank you, Mr. Product Owner. Team, let's go ahead and let's deal with grapes versus apples again. Would you go ahead and chat those? So I'm going to, Chatan is not able to hear. All he can do is see the screen. So while you're taking your answers here, team, I'm going to go ahead and chat Chatan. Okay, I'm seeing the answers come in here, some privately, some to everybody. Okay, I see a couple of apples now. Okay, so now team, I'm playing the Scrum Master now, and I would say something like this. Okay, team, it looks like as we've gotten clarity from the product owner and understand better what the construct of those user stories are, there's still a divide between apples and grapes. And in order for us to move on, as you know, we need to come to consensus. Now, I'm not going to decide for you because I'm the Scrum Master, but I'm going to maybe throw out a couple suggestions on how you can come to consensus on this. So it would seem to me that one option would be for us to say apples and grapes are basically the same size. And we could treat them the same as opposed to one being bigger than the other. That would be one option. Or team, maybe you would want to, at this point in time, just flip a coin and say, let's go with grapes being the smallest or apples being the smallest. What else could you do? Could maybe go ahead and estimate another one instead. So team, what would you like to do? So Sandeep, hey, Mr. Product Owner, Sandeep is asking about the health value of apples over grapes. Do you have any comments on that? And the product owner would say, I'm not interested in the health value, just the ease of eating, just the size of getting it done. So you may think one is healthier than the other. That's not an issue with any of the user stories here. Okay, here's a chat here. This is about estimating. Why can't we have both apples and grapes as easy to eat equally? There's a suggestion there that would be good. Team, would you, what if we did that? So it's your choice. Okay, I see it. That works. Are there any objections? Okay, so I'm looking at this. Somebody's asking for a vote be taken for the majority. No, you know, team, we've been learning from our projects that we're not going to, unless we absolutely have to, we're not going to use majority rules. We're going to see if we can come to a consensus here. So as your Scrum Master, I mean, you can decide if you want to do it that way, but I think that you would find that you would be better off if you worked on coming to consensus on that. So it would seem to me that oops, that didn't work out the way I wanted. Seems to me that the suggestion is that we resolve the sizing between grapes and apples as making them both the same size. Is that what you want to do, team? Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. Okay, so I know I can't see what your own personal circumstances are there in your office or your home, and so I don't always know if you're actually engaged, and so I don't know if I've heard from everybody that's engaged or not. So I'm watching, and so far I have seen yes. We're going to treat grapes and apples as being the same size. So with that said now, team, what we're going to do is at the same time when I say go, I want you to chat me the size that you think it would be. Now let me give you some guidance on this. Since this is our first sizing, I'm not saying that as well, team, as I'd like to, because this is the smallest size. The grapes and the apples are the same. And we want to establish a baseline to compare all of the other user stories to. You're probably going to want to say something like the smallest user story is going to be 1 or 2 for our purposes here. You can decide, I mean, you can go with other numbers, but remember that what we're saying is the apples and the grapes are the smallest, and that means that once we establish the grapes and the oranges, the baseline size, nothing will be smaller than that. So with that in mind, team, go ahead and decide what number you're going to chat, and let's go ahead and chat that now. Okay, so team, it looks to me like we've all selected either 1, 2, or 3. Now, because we've done 1, 2, or 3, and we don't really have some big outliers there, team, we should do another round of voting, and unless anybody sees some burning need to discuss the differences between 1, 2, and 3, you know, maybe what you'll want to do is just go with 2. I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I'm just suggesting that maybe 2 would work for a baseline as we work on estimating the rest of the user stories. So everybody now think about what your new vote is going to be, and go ahead and chat that now. Okay, so it looks like, team, you've pretty well decided on your own that it's going to be okay to go with 2. Well, I see 1 there. And so what we would do now, team, is we would discuss with Shilpa why the feeling is still a 1, as opposed to taking the suggestion that we kind of take the average and go with 2. And maybe Shilpa has some really good points that we haven't thought of, and maybe we would change our mind. But let's say that we had gone through that and come to consensus, and we now have resolved that the apples and the grapes are going to be sized at 2. And so now, team, let's pretend that we did that. Now let's take a look at 102, and let's get that. Thinking about, there's nothing to be sorry about. It's whatever your vote is. Nothing wrong at all. And I'm just accelerating it. Because a planning meeting could take, depending on the length, it could take a couple of hours. So let's go ahead and let's size orange right now. So if grape apples are the smallest user stories, and we're going to compare everything else to them, what size do you think the orange should be? So think about what you want to choose. That would be 3 or higher. Be sure and take a look at the watermelon. Those are also going to need to be sized as well. So, right, comparing things relative to sizing, apple compared to the grapes and apples, and then there's also, thinking about the effort for watermelon and coconut. So when I say, everybody chat your sizing for orange. So go ahead and do it now. Okay, so here's what I see. I see mostly 5s, and then I see an 8, and I see a 3. What we would do now is we would hear from 8, and we'd hear from 3 to see what their thinking is, and see if that changed our minds at all. And we would do that for as many rounds as it needed for us to get to consensus. If there were a struggle coming to consensus as the Scrum Master, I might throw out some options, but the team would still decide. So let's say that we discussed 8, we discussed 3, and 3 and 8 were convinced that 5 was the better choice, and we all ended up agreeing that 5 was the answer for the sizing for the orange. And then we would move to, let's do coconut next. So think about how you would size coconut, and go ahead and chat your answer right now. What size do you think coconut would be? 105. Okay, so I'm seeing, is a whole coconut? Oh, now there's a question for the product owner. So product owner, is it a whole coconut? And the product owner says, no, that's a good question. It should have been clearer in my user story. And yes, it is a whole coconut just sitting on the table in your hotel room. Okay, so we got 13s and 20s on that one. After the product owner clarified that it was just a whole coconut sitting on the table, that's when I saw another 20 show up. Now, actually, the question about is it a whole coconut or not would have been asked before we attempted to size it. So we would want to have a clear understanding of every user story before we actually did the sizing. But you can see now that, so let's say that we ended up with 20, and let's say for the watermelon that was, I don't know, let's say that was 8. And so this is how we size things up. And as a team, then, we would do a sprint, and we would do some of the user stories. We would know what our capacity is. We call that velocity. And then we would go to another sprint, and then based on the velocity, we would work on the user stories that would fit into that sprint. Now, eating fruit, the construct isn't great for that. But looking at grapes, oranges, apples, watermelon, coconuts, I know that that's all, fruit that we're familiar with, and so, we all have our opinions about the effort it takes to eat them. We don't have time to do it right now, but I do have another planning poker activity, which is based on an inventory and point of sale system with, again, 5 user stories. And if we have time, we'll do this tomorrow. I'm not sure if we will. And this is a little bit more like a real project as opposed to eating fruit while you're traveling. So with that team, that was a good introduction to planning poker. And I thought about doing it after we actually did the content on it. And I thought, no, it might be fun just to kind of jump in and, it's called flipping the classroom. It's a technique where we kind of deal with the end before we actually deal with the knowledge. So it'll be interesting when we get to the slide on planning poker, what our thinking is when we get there. Okay, so now with that, let's deal with questions before we jump into the content. We're going to start with lesson 4. So before we do that, Shweta, could you, Shweta, Ritesh, and Kalavir, would you chat your questions that you had on the previous content? And then Sandeep, when it comes to the assignment, let's wait until the end of the session when we wrap things up and I circle back to talking about the assignment. Oh, Ritesh, your questions were about the assignment as well? So what I'm interested in right now are questions that have to do with previously covered content, not about the assignment. Okay, so when you prioritize user stories, we need to know the value addition to the customer in the Moscow technique. It doesn't have to be the Moscow technique. This is a good question, though, team. So if we're looking at these product backlogs, this is the sequencing that the product owner has put the user stories. So whatever technique the product owner is using, this is the priority that the product owner wants the user stories treated. Could be Moscow, it could be relative sizing, it's whatever the product owner wants to do. We don't make those decisions, the product owner does. Did that help, Kalavir? Okay, any other questions on previous content, team? Okay, thank you for that confirmation. Okay, here's a question. As a Scrum Master, how do we track Scrum details and how do we maintain it? We don't. The hierarchy of reporting and who's responsible for work getting done is different. And what you're bringing up is actually one of the dilemmas that organizations face when they transition from Waterfall to Scrum. In Waterfall, the project manager, the project lead, is responsible for making sure the work gets done and has a role in deciding how it's going to get done. In a Scrum project, that is not the case. The team decides how to do that. So we're going to talk more about the roles today in lesson number 5, and so that'll probably become clearer to you. But the Scrum Master becomes a facilitator and a coach and a mentor and does not track and does not have the responsibility of gathering data and sharing progress and status with other stakeholders. The team has that responsibility. Now, the Scrum Master might be the one that updates the information radiators, but that would be based on the data that the team comes up with. Scrum Master's assessment for the team. So that's the question. Is it necessary to have a Scrum team with equal knowledge technically, true or false? No, it is not. In fact, most organizations will build their teams thinking from at least a technical point of view. They will look at senior experience and will build a team with some senior members as well as some senior members, right? Forward thinking, the newer members, the more junior ones, learning from the senior. But then there would also be the dimension of cross-functional thinking, and that is there should be on the team all of the skills necessary to design, code, test, and deliver. Okay, anything else, team? Great questions. Okay, so let's call that a wrap on questions. And then a request, team, will you assist me in remembering to address the assignment questions when we get to the end of the session today? Oh, here's another question. Then what did the Scrum Master do with the output obtained from what you did yesterday and today? The Scrum Master does nothing with that. That is a coordination effort of the team itself. Know where the team is so that they can coordinate their activities together. The role of the Scrum Master is to address the impediments that were raised during the daily Scrum. See, we don't have, okay, so you got it. Can you see, I think the light bulb just might have gone on. We don't have that kind of directive role when it comes to a Scrum project. The team figured all that out, and the team is responsible for it. And our job as the Scrum Master is to facilitate that. We can post, we never dictate. Okay, so team, let's jump into lesson number 4. And I think I already have it queued up. And here it is. So Scrum roles. Oh, maybe I said that wrong. Scrum roles is what we're going to do right now. I had said 5, but I misremembered that. How's that for trying to be politically correct? I misremembered it. I forgot it. Okay, so what we're going to, when we're finished with this lesson, you should be able to describe the roles and commitments of the Scrum Master, be able to explain tools and techniques used by the Scrum Master to coach the team and resolve conflicts, define the product owner role, define the developer role on the Scrum team, and explain the essential attributes of being a Scrum Master, product owner, or a developer on a Scrum team. So, I clarify this just a little bit, and I'm just going to go to the whiteboard and make sure that we're clear on the language, glossary stuff. So there are 3 roles, and you know what the roles are. There is the Scrum Master, there is the product owner, and then there's the team. And so this word, the team, is kind of a funny word because we often think about this group being the team. And that's really not the case. So especially when you're taking your test, be very clear that when it talks about the team, it's just this right here. Now, are we all working together as a team? Yes. But when it comes to labels and the exam, make sure that you're clear about this. And the team is responsible for all of the house, right? And, delivering value to the customer / product owner. So this is where the work gets done. And as we go through this lesson here, it'll be clearer how the Scrum Master and the product owner fit into this effort to actually create the software that the customer / product owner wants. Okay, so coming back to my desktop here, and I'll go ahead and change the camera, although I always feel more comfortable when you're watching a whiteboard instead of me. Okay, so here are the 3 roles: the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the team. And what I want to do is let's start in the middle with the product owner. Right here. Notice that it says here, the product owner is responsible for the project's success by defining the project vision, requirements, and priorities. So the product owner is the one who creates the scope of the project and gets the buy-in from everybody. The product owner is the one responsible for the vision of the project. So the product owner becomes the individual that the team has to please. The team figures out how to meet the requirements that the product owner creates for the project. Now let's go to the right and let's look at the team. And here it says the team comprises 5 to 9 people with a mix of roles. Roles meaning developer, tester, designer, those kinds of roles. And self-organizes to determine how best to meet the goals of the product owner. So Ritesh was asking, well, how does the Scrum Master fit into here? So to revisit that question, the answer is that the team is the one that figures all of that out on its own. And then the Scrum Master, looking over to the left now, is accountable to the team to remove impediments that will prevent them from achieving the goals of the product owner. Now, the Scrum Master plays a deeper role than just that. What we just said is right, but the Scrum Master is the trainer, the evangelist, the facilitator, all of that in an effort to assist both the product owner in being successful, as well as assisting the team in being successful, without ever robbing the team of its empowerment. Okay, and now we have to resolve something on this slide, and I'm going to create a dilemma, and then I'm going to give you the solution for the exam. Notice that over on the right, it says the team size is 5 to 9. So the team, right? Not including the Scrum Master, the product owner, just the team. 5 to 9, or that could be expressed as 7 plus or minus 2. Elsewhere, we will find that it is 3 to 9, or 6 plus or minus 3. So I did some reading up on this, and because I've already taken the exam, this is where I want us to be for our ASM effort. And based on what I read, this was how it was, and this seems to be what it's becoming. But there is not unanimity out there among all of the folks that do Scrum projects. So in the real world, it's going to be either 7 plus or minus 2 or 6 plus or minus 3. For the exam, I want us to do 6 plus or minus 3. So that would be a good thing to take some notes on. So you can see, however, that in either case, the team should never be larger than 9. And then on this end right here, it could be as small as 3 or maybe 5 if depending on the exam. But so now I'm circling back. I didn't mean to do that, team. My simple point here is that the team is small either way, never larger than 9. And then just to be clear, in case I confused us, this is the one to hang on to for the exam. Okay, so now back to our slides. Okay, the role of the Scrum Master. Now, whenever I say I am now acting as the Scrum Master, I am tailoring my comments when I put on that hat in a way that will assist you in answering questions on the exam, primarily. Training, of course, but whenever I say I'm putting my Scrum Master hat on, that's when your antennae should go up and say, okay, I've got to make sure I get the way Jeff is approaching this, because that's how I'm going to want to be thinking when I take the exam. Okay. So our first slide here about the Scrum Master, over on the left-hand side, the Scrum Master is a servant leader, a facilitator of Scrum events, and impediment remover and process coach. And all of those activities, efforts, can make or break a project. Even though the team's responsible for getting the work done and figuring out how they're going to do it, if there's not a good Scrum Master, the project could fail. Now, notice that none of these items on the left embrace any kind of a directive role, right? We serve the team and we facilitate events. That's what we do. Now, to be clear, over on the right, here's what a Scrum Master is not. Scrum Master is not a line manager, is not a task master, is not a technical or design authority. Now, you can have a Scrum Master that is an authority on technical issues and design. But for the project, the Scrum Master never inserts himself or herself into the work of the team in addressing technical or design issues. In fact, when it comes to transitioning from waterfall to Scrum, if the individual that you appoint as the Scrum Master is a coder or somebody that used to do that kind of work, there may need to be some training to make sure that that Scrum Master does not get involved in the work of the team. And then lastly, the Scrum Master is not a decision maker. And I was modeling that when we were going through our activities before, where I was making it clear that I was maybe throwing out some suggestions about how the team could move forward, but I was not telling the team how to do it. The team gets to do it. Let's see, a question here, as a process coach, you mean KT? I'm not familiar with what you mean by KT on projects or assigned module to particular teams. Knowledge transfer. Yes, that might be the case, as long as that's not done in a this is how you have to do it approach. Does that make sense? There's a skill to being a great Scrum Master. We chatted about that a little bit last week. And the ability to wield power and influence over those that you are not going to dictate to, those that you are going to make sure remain empowered, is what a Scrum Master has to do. And so when we think about this conceptually, when it comes to power and influence, that can be acquired by demand, right? By force. And there will be some power and influence as a result of the force that is wielded in order to compel compliance. However, that will never last. So somewhere in a book that I read, it was said something like this: win hearts by honoring choice. So our role, our approach as a Scrum Master is to honor the empowerment of the team, but acquire the ability to influence the team by honoring that empowerment. And going back to what Ritesh chatted here, as a process coach, you mean knowledge transfer on projects or assigned modules to a particular team. That's right. So one of the things we can do, it's right over here, a process coach, which is not how to do the coding, but rather how to do Scrum. And the team, you know, as we coach the team on how to do Scrum projects, the team then, on a continuously improving way, gets better and better at what they're doing based on how they choose to get better and better. So do you get that vision? Do you kind of get that feeling? Yeah, the question, I did pose the question. It was, oh, can you ask that question to be posted to all participants? Yeah, I can do that. In fact, I will chat that. I read it a couple times. So team, this is a good reminder. If you're willing, go ahead and change your send to option to all participants right now. And then when you ask a question, then everybody on the team can see that. Now, obviously, if there's a reason to chat me privately, that's fine as well. And remember, we're all interested in everybody being successful. So if you have a question and you're among friends, you're among those that want you to be successful, so don't be shy or feel like your question is inappropriate or something. Ask the question. It's a safe place and we'll get it dealt with. Okay, let's see. What can a Scrum Master do to remove a technology-related impediment to a specific member? Provide training. Maybe not do the training, but provide the training. So that's an impediment, right? You've got a team member that's been tasked to do something that the team member doesn't know how to do or doesn't know how to do it well. That's an impediment. Get the training. Improve the skill. Now, that could be done a number of ways, maybe, you know, pairing up that team member with somebody that has the skill, you know, a senior member. Now, it would not necessarily be the Scrum Master's sole responsibility. The team can take care of that as well. But if it surfaced as a impediment during the daily stand-up, the Scrum Master would address that after the daily Scrum was over. Should the Scrum Master come from a technology background? No, not that it is not that it couldn't be. The Scrum Master could have a technology background. And that's one of those things where it creates some positive and some negatives. The positive is that the Scrum Master can do a better job of kind of looking ahead and seeing some problems at the team might be running into, and then be able to do some coaching and mentoring. The problem, however, is that the Scrum Master would have a tendency to poke his nose into the team and what they're doing. So as long as the Scrum Master is clear that he or she is not to be involved in the technical decisions, is not a decision maker, having a technology background could be a plus. Yes, that is exactly right. Team, you saw what Viraj wrote. So instead of personally helping out, he should facilitate. Okay, and so let me give you a vision for this. Remember, the construct here is, as a Scrum Master, we are not going to rob the team or team members of their empowerment. So let's say that I'm the Scrum Master and I'm wandering the team room just to kind of see how things are going and see if there's anything I can do to facilitate or assist. And I see a team member that's struggling with something. And for the sake of a visual, let's say that the team member is trying to get a heavy box up a flight of stairs. Now, obviously, it would have to do with technology, probably. But walking around the room, and I see a team member trying to figure out how to get this heavy box up a flight of stairs. And so I approach the team member, and I say, would you like some assistance? And if the team member says no, I walk away. I am not going to rob the team member of that experience. I may know how to get that heavy box up that flight of stairs, and I know that I could assist the team member, but if the team member does not want my assistance, I let the team member alone. If the team member says, yes, I would love some assistance, I would then say, how would you like me to assist you? Now, if the team member had a suggestion, I would say, great, that's how I will assist you. If the team member says, I don't have any idea, I am stuck, then I would say, would you like me to offer some suggestions? The team member presumably would say, yes, that would be wonderful, thank you. I would then offer some suggestions, like maybe one of them would be, well, maybe what if I were to carry one side of the box and you carried the other, and we took it up together? Would that work for you? No, I want to be able to do this all by myself. Okay. What if we were to get a dolly on which you could place the box and then you could pull it up step by step on the dolly? Would that work? Yes, that would work. That's what I wanted to do, but I don't have a dolly. I would then say, okay, I will take care of procuring a dolly so that you can then on your own move the box up the flight of stairs. Did that make sense, team? How every step of the way I honored the empowerment or the free will of that team member, as opposed to just picking it up and moving it myself. And you can see that for most of us, it's just kind of human nature. Even with the best of intentions, we might actually rob a team member of a learning opportunity, a skill building opportunity, and take away some of their empowerment. So the Scrum Master role, well, you read a little list like on the slide right here on the left, it looks it could be taken as being kind of lightweight, but it's really not. And if I were hiring a company to do software for me, I would have more interest in the Scrum Master than the team. I'm not saying I wouldn't have interest in the team. I would, but I would have more interest in the Scrum Master because I have faith that Scrum works. And I know the team using continuous improvement is going to get better and better and better. I'm confident about that. What I worry most about is the Scrum Master is going to derail the team from their success through continuous improvement. Does that make sense? So, so now Ritesh is asking a great question here. So can't I stop them even if I know they are on the wrong path? And the answer is no. If you stop them, you have robbed them of their empowerment. And you have likely robbed them of the learning that they would get by failing. Now, and it's possible that a team could fail in a sprint. It could not be accepted by the product owner. Your role as the Scrum Master would not be to tell them you should have done this and you should have done that. Your role is to help heal, lift, and encourage. Team, I know this didn't work out, but you've got the skills and the abilities and the tools to figure out what you could have done differently. So shake it off, team. It's okay. You're going to learn from this. This is going to be successful. Now get into that retrospective and figure out what you could have done better. Does that make sense, Ritesh? So, team, I can speculate here that Ritesh is either in an environment or comes from an environment that is very traditional in its approach, a waterfall approach. And what Ritesh is sort of working through in his head right now is, okay, I'm getting the concepts here, I'm seeing it, and now he's looking at the real world. You know, what about if this happens or that happens? As a Scrum Master, what do I do? And so he asks this question, so I can't stop them even if I know they are on the wrong path? The answer is no. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some tools and techniques that you could do to maybe get them to rethink their approach, but you don't stop them. So, for example, one of the roles that you could play, Ritesh, is a devil's advocate, particularly during the sprint planning meeting. And the devil's advocate role is you ask questions that catalyzes the team to rethink their approach. You're not telling them that their approach is wrong. You're just trying to get them to look at other possibilities by your questions without telling them. And if they don't go there, and you can't figure out a way to assist them in getting there without robbing the team of its empowerment, you do not rob the team of its empowerment. You let them fail. You know, so here's along the lines of what Ritesh is talking about here, a lesson that I learned as a parent is that the only good advice, let me say it differently, the difference between good advice and bad advice is whether or not I was asked for it. And like you know, I love my kids, and they would accuse me of lecturing them. And it was a head scratcher for me. I love my kids. I'm trying to tell them what they need to do to avoid problems in their lives. But because they didn't want to hear it at that time, I always got a negative result. They felt I was being demanding and controlling, and I didn't care, and my whole motivation was because I cared. So if we have team members that are not ready, or the whole team, if the team is not ready for some mentoring and coaching, hands off. We have to trust the team that they will get it done. And if you read the manifesto and the 12 guiding principles, you know that that's one of the things of team empowerment, and trust them to get it done. You have to trust them. What do you think, Ritesh? Is that getting you there? Just looking for some confirmation there, Ritesh. I'll keep my eye on the chat box. Okay, yes, thank you for that confirmation. Okay, so what Ritesh really did is he pushed us into this next slide. And so some of what's on this next slide we've already sort of discussed. So let's look at the top left. The Scrum Master is responsible for enabling the team and maximizing the team throughput, right? That's what we're responsible for, enabling the team so that they can get as much done as they possibly can without telling them what to do. Oh, you responded to the group, but I didn't get it. So change your send to option to all participants, and then I'll see it as well. If you were doing it just to all attendees, I don't see that. That's why I, so you were responding. You're probably thinking, stupid Jeff. So yeah, change your send to option to all participants. There we go. There it is. I see that, and so does everybody else. Okay, so now let's go over to the right. Committed. Show 100% commitment to the team, even if they are not full-time Scrum Masters. Now, here's, one of the real-life dilemmas. Sometimes an organization will make the decision that a Scrum Master is going to also have some other duties and responsibilities. could be to another team. It could be on operational stuff. It should be avoided if possible. So on your exam and in the real world, the ideal situation is the Scrum Master is 100%, and there's one Scrum Master for each team. Now, if it turns out that that's not possible, then the way it will be on the test and the way it should be in the real world is that regardless of what the Scrum Master might be working on at the time, if the team needs the assistance of the Scrum Master to facilitate an event or whatever it might be, the Scrum Master should drop everything and focus on the team. Take care of his or her duties as a Scrum Master. There's a related dilemma to that, and that is, what if you have a distributed team? And so you have a Scrum Master in one location and not the other. And in the middle of the Scrum Master's night, the team members that are working on the project on the other side of the world need the Scrum Master's assistance. The Scrum Master should be available. Now, obviously, things could be worked out, but if the team really needed the Scrum Master at 2 a.m., the Scrum Master should be available. That's what commitment looks like as the Scrum Master. Okay, so now let's look over on the left. Humble, able to let the team get the glory without letting ego get in the way. And you're picking up on that, right? The idea of being a coach, you know, the Scrum Master being a coach and comparing that to athletics is valuable. The team is out there playing the game. They're figuring out how to get it done. The coach offers suggestions, and I get the construct isn't perfect because a coach can tell, you know, team members what to do in athletics. But we've all seen what happens, you know. Good coaches, when the team wins, you know, the coach is saying it's all about the team. They did awesome. And that's how we should be. The Scrum Master is not somebody that let me say that differently. If you are a Scrum Master and you're seeking recognition for the success of the project, you're robbing the team. And you would diminish your influence over the team by doing that. The team gets the glory. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones that are actually figuring out how to do it. Now you can take, you know, you can take great pride in what the team does. Team, you did awesome. And you can, you know, you can feel good about it that way. But the team gets the glory, not you. Okay, influential, be able to create influence without any authority, and that's what we were just talking about. That's what Ritesh brought up primarily. Collaborative creates a culture of collaboration in the team, and I would like to expand on this. So not only does the Scrum Master assist in creating a culture in which the team can collaborate and, you know, make decisions and work things out, but also the Scrum Master creates a collaborative environment between the product owner and the team. So the Scrum Master is going to be primarily the one responsible for the tone of how things go. And there is the possibility that there can be conflict between the product owner and the team. The product owner could be pushing very hard to get more work done, and the team is saying, you know, our capacity is only this. You know, and then the Scrum Master is saying, but I have to have this, and the team is saying, well, we can't do it. You know, and you can see how it could escalate. The Scrum Master is responsible for assisting in resolving conflict like that, and and if it were what I was just saying, the scenario where the product owner is trying to get the team to do more than it has the capacity to do, my role as the Scrum Master would be to do some coaching with the product owner and explain how Scrum works, and that the team is responsible for deciding how to get stuff done, and we have to trust the team. And when the team says they can't do that user story in this sprint, we have to trust them. And if you need that user story done in this sprint, then you're going to have to make the tough decision of what not to do then, because they only have this capacity. So as a Scrum Master, that would be another thing I would do, is not just coaching the team, but coaching the product owner. Which means, of course, that the Scrum Master has to be an expert in Scrum and understanding of the technical environment. Maybe not being a technical expert, but, understanding that, you take a user story and there has to be some preliminary thought into what needs to be done and breaking things down into tasks, and there has to be testing done, and so, some knowledge like that is helpful. And it would be helpful to have a deeper knowledge, but without ever getting into the team's work. Now, being an expert in Scrum, that's mandatory. You can tell, right? Understanding how Scrum works and being able to coach the product owner of the team and maybe even other stakeholders that might be poking their nose into things, got to know it. And the mindset is that if a organization decides to have a project run using Scrum, it is Scrum works. And if something is failing, it's because we didn't do Scrum correctly. Now, we've touched on all of these things on the next slide here, but let's go ahead and review them. Number one, serves the team, sets up and facilitates the Scrum rituals, ceremonies. And we talked about 4 main ceremonies, right? There's the sprint planning meeting, there the daily scrums, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. Ensures that the team is collaborating and removes roadblocks in communication and removes the issues blocking the team's progress. So serving the team. Protects the team. Shields the team from external interference and disturbance, which could be coming from the product owner or other stakeholders. Keeps the team away from unnecessary pressure and unreasonable expectations. Again, that could come from the product owner. And then resolves and manages conflicts within the team. Coaches the team, trains them on Scrum methodology, ensures the team stays true to the spirit of Agile development, and reminds the team about Agile sprint principles. Now let's go. I got one more slide. Actually a couple more. For the Scrum Master topic. So this one is about, who should be the Scrum Master? Who should be selected? So over on the left, what if you're considering a technical lead or expert as the Scrum Master? One of us brought up that question, right? Well, this is possible. However, the Scrum Master has to make sure that he or she does not become the decision maker, even for technical issues. So, it might be a challenge for a new Scrum Master that is quite expert when it comes to technology to restrain himself or herself from actually, getting involved with the team and making some decisions. But is a tech lead or somebody expert in technology a potential Scrum Master? Yes, absolutely. Full-time versus part-time, we addressed that. Ideally, full-time. We mentioned here in the future a Scrum Master may take up other tasks too. So the idea would be full-time if you can, but if not, then the Scrum Master's role with the team tends to wane as the project goes on. The team is trained better, they're coached better on how to do Scrum, and the team is really owning it. And so it's likely that less and less time will be needed by the Scrum Master as the project goes forward, and so maybe the Scrum Master would take up some other tasks as well. Scrum Master by rotation. What about having a team member rotate into the role of the Scrum Master and the Scrum Master rotate then onto the team? That would not be preference. You would want the Scrum Master to be the same person throughout the project. But, depending on the needs of the project and the makeup of the team and the environment, this could be something that is worth considering. So these are all possibilities here, and let's just make sure that we are reminded that the ideal situation is for there to be one Scrum Master for each team, and the Scrum Master is a full-time Scrum Master. What other tasks? Well, it could be jumping in and being a team member. It could be things outside of the project, operational things, or maybe even another project. So it could essentially be anything. Did that help, Ritesh? Remember all participants. There we go. Hey, got it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. Failure modes for the Scrum Master position. On the left, the inappropriate selection, meaning we picked the wrong person for it. What's going to happen? It's going to mess with the team's effectiveness. You've caught a vision, right, for what kind of a Scrum Master you're going to be, and you can see that if you fall short of that, it's going to have a negative impact on the team's effectiveness. How do you resolve it? Well, coach the Scrum Master. Or if worst case comes to worst case, replace them with a better Scrum Master. Sometimes the way organizations that transition from waterfall to Scrum deal with this is they will change the makeup of the PMO. You know, in waterfall, the PMO can have a rather directive role when it comes to projects under its purview. That obviously has to change when we adopt Scrum, but one of the things the PMO could do is become the repository of trainers and training information. And so, you know, if you got a Scrum Master that isn't quite measuring up, then, you know, somebody from the PMO will actually coach the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master doubling as a developer. So we talked about this, right? What are the results? Confusion of roles, and perhaps worst case is the Scrum Master not behaving like a Scrum Master, not assisting the team the way he should or she should. How do you do this? Well, how do you resolve it rather? Well, avoid it if you can. But if you can't avoid it, then there might be a need to do some training with that Scrum Master on knowing exactly when to wear the hat of the Scrum Master and when to wear the hat of the developer, and that if the team needs a Scrum Master, regardless of the urgency of whatever the development work is the Scrum Master might be working on, the Scrum Master has to stop and assist the team or team member. That would take precedence rather. Okay, and then on the right, the Scrum Master making decisions for the team. I think that we have covered that. This is, in my mind, the most difficult challenge. This is the biggest threat. And, you know, here, what's the result? Lack of self-organization, meaning the team becomes dependent on the Scrum Master for decisions and directions for everything. If this happens, continuous improvement is probably derailed. And the likelihood of the project being successful is greatly diminished, might even result in a complete fail. How do you resolve it? Well, coach the Scrum Master. Okay, the Scrum Master needs to develop those soft skills that we were talking about. Of, you know, how do you coach, how do you mentor, how do you facilitate? And you work on dealing with your own set of soft skills, like being a good listener and being a good steward, and, you know, maybe taking on the role of the devil's advocate like we talked about. So there are things that you can do to become better as a Scrum Master. Can you use that red dot on the screen or a highlighter help stay focused on the current point being discussed? I can do that. Thank you. So now that we're finished, there's where we are. Yeah, I appreciate comments like that. Okay, so that's the Scrum Master. Now let's talk about the product owner. Now over on the right, let's do the left first, the vision provider. So remember that we said the product owner is essentially responsible for the success of the project. So the product owner then has to establish and provide a compelling vision for the project. Team, this is what we're going to do. This is how the organization is going to benefit. Here's how you're going to benefit, et cetera, et cetera. Get everybody, to buy in and get that vision to the point where everybody is on the same page. That's what consensus is. Ensure that the product is actually listed in the product backlog. So the different user stories need to be created and put into the backlog, and then add details, clarify the backlog as questions come up from the team. Let's see, isn't the timeline between voting and consensus blurred? Which decisions are made during Scrum? I mean, the need for consensus on each and every issue may lead to deadlocks. Okay, Viraj, that is a great question. And we bumped into that a little bit when we were doing our daily Scrum at the beginning of our day together. So yeah, if there is a deadlock, meaning the team can't figure out how to come to consensus, then the Scrum Master might assist in facilitating a participatory decision-making event, or maybe do some more coaching. And the Scrum Master might say, okay, you've got to figure out a way to go forward, and so maybe some of you might want to yield and go ahead and agree with the others. And when I say, kind of yield and accommodate, I don't mean do it resentfully, but rather you are willing to rethink your position and agree with the others. And could that result in some delays? Does that make a hit on the schedule? It does. But here's the thing, team. At the front end, there might be some issues like we had today in the real world, where it was more difficult to come to a consensus. But the thing of it is that all of this is about continuous improvement. I would venture a guess that if we were to do another planning poker activity, we would be clearer that we want to get to consensus, and we would be interested in the outliers in case we hadn't, thought through everything correctly, or maybe somebody had a better idea on how to get something done. But we know that we're headed to consensus, and so there would be discussions between the team members, which was hard to facilitate in our setup here, but team members would be talking back and forth. Okay, so you see this about the apple, or you see that about the coconut, or whatever it is. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, I hear what you're saying, but have you thought about this or that? So there's that back and forth, and you want that. A team is always smarter than the smartest person on the team, and so you want a lot of dialogue and debate. Not unhealthy, angry stuff, but you want to find the best solution. Okay, so Viraj says, so maybe we are pressed for time, so we cannot take that approach. Then if you do that, you're not doing Scrum, and you will lose some of the benefits of Scrum. You would then be doing some kind of a Agile approach, a waterfall/Agile, in an unhealthy way. So Viraj and the rest of you, now is a good time to do something here. Not only for real world, but for the test itself. We're going to go to agilemanifesto.org, and we're going to go to the 12 guiding principles. And let's see if I can find the one I'm looking for quickly. Dun, dun, dun. Here it is right here. Build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Okay, so yeah, Viraj, I see what you're saying. You got the point. And but let me go ahead and leverage that and take us one other place here. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. So in Scrum, continuous improvement is built into it. And if time is an issue, you will either trust the team to get it done, or you will have to use some other kind of approach. And it's not unlikely, in fact, you would expect that a team would struggle more on the front than later on. And so while it might take longer on the front end to get stuff done, that will be more than made up for because of continuous improvement going forward. It's like little kiddies and tying their shoes. Of course, you know, little kids don't have shoes with shoelaces anymore, but it's all Velcro, I guess. But, you know, back in the day, it used to be so much faster to tie the shoelaces for the kids instead of, you know, watch them struggle for 5 minutes and then it kept coming loose and then doing it again and doing it again. But the thing of it is, by letting the little kiddies work through it and eventually figure out how to tie their own shoelaces, eventually I didn't have to do it at all. It actually was faster in the long run by paying the price on the front end. Okay, so thank you for that prompt, Viraj. I now understand that you got the point and you were making a conclusion sharing that with us. But it gave us the opportunity to touch on those 2 points in the 12 guiding principles. Okay, so the product owner is also the boundary provider, meaning defines what success looks like, and this includes timelines and budget and priorities. Defines the minimal viable product. So the product owner could come up with this wonderful product backlog that he or she wants to have done, but would define of those user stories in the product backlog the ones that absolutely have to be done to go to the market with it or to go, excuse me, to go live. Define expectations around non-functional criteria. So the team may have some non-functional user stories that need to be developed. But that will not be done without the product owner being involved and making sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to, sorry about that, everybody's on the same page when it comes to what absolutely has to be done, and then provide acceptance criteria, not just for the project, but for each user story, because each user story will result in working software, which will be demoed in the sprint review, and at that point in time, the product owner will say, I accept or I don't accept based on the acceptance criteria. Now, thinking about a team going forward on a project, the front end of the project is probably going to require more assistance from the Scrum Master on training, you know, how to do Scrum, facilitating events, and, you know, you could even tell from today when we were doing our daily Scrum that we weren't, I mean, not the daily Scrum, but the planning poker, that as a team, we hadn't quite gelled yet, right? And I know the construct was rough. You know, if we could open everything up and we could have a dialogue, it would have been better. But you could tell we were still dealing with the effort of getting to consensus on some of those user stories. But the team will get better and better at that. And so those kinds of activities and those kinds of challenges will become less and less as the project advances. And then what happens is, as the team gets better at getting its work done, right, they're actually doing more and they're doing it faster, that means that they're going to need the product owner's involvement more going forward, because they're going to have questions. What about this? And what do you mean with this user story? And what about that? Et cetera, et cetera. So the availability of the product owner has to increase as the project goes forward. And this should also point out how in that other slide we said that as the project advances, the Scrum Master might take on other duties, whatever those other duties might be, because the time necessary to be the Scrum Master for a team is most likely going to wane. Okay, so now attributes of a product owner. Top left, must be available to the team, as we were just talking about, primarily for clarification purposes during the sprint, but then, of course, in the sprint planning and the sprint review, the product owner has to be there, has to be involved. But on an ongoing basis, the product owner is primarily there for clarification about the user stories and the priorities of the product backlog. Decisive, the product owner has to be willing to make the decisions necessary when tough decisions have to be made. Hey, Ritesh, am I doing okay with my little marker there for focus? Is that working for you? Okay, good. Because they do have a pen light or something like that. All right, so we talked about this. Also related to this is to not unnecessarily reverse old decisions. You know, can you imagine the chaos of a project where the product owner is just all the time changing his mind about this or that and the priorities? Now, the product owner can do that, but if it's unnecessary, that's going to be a problem. So we'll embrace change, and we'll do whatever the product owner wants us to do, but the product owner should be clear about the goals of the project and not be in a position where he or she is continually having to reverse old opinions. Business savvy. Now, the product owner, you know, that's an interesting position. The product owner is the customer voice for the project, but the product owner is also got to understand where the project fits into the overall business of the organization. Is it profit? Is it efficiency? Is it keeping a customer happy? You know, what is it that impacts this project or that this project will impact? Down below that, communicative, meaning that the product owner needs to be a good listener and have the ability to work with the team in coming to consensus when decisions need to be made. Also, being able to engage effectively with other stakeholders, you know, the suits or the end users or whatever the case might be, and then be versatile enough to tailor the approach, you know, how the communication is done. And it would make sense, right, that if the product owner needs to interface and engage with the suits, the way that's done is going to be different than when the product owner is engaging with the team. Okay, so the last one here, bottom right, empowered, have the authority to make decisions and be held accountable for them. Not the team's decisions on how to do the work, but rather the scope of the project. So the product owner has to know what the objectives of the project are, and then have the authority to write the user stories, adjust them, make whatever decisions need to be made in order to get the outcome that is anticipated. So can you imagine how awful it would be if, you know, you're in the sprint planning meeting and the team asks the product owner a question about a user story, and the product owner says, I don't know, let me check and I'll get back to you. Well, when can you do that? Well, so-and-so's not available until next Tuesday. Well, can you see the problem there? So the product owner has to be empowered to make decisions for the project and, of course, be held responsible for it. Okay, so now let's talk about selecting the right product owner. Could there be a team of product owners as opposed to a single one? And the answer is yes, you could have a product owner team, but if you had a product owner team, one of them would be designated as the chief product owner, where the final decision-making authority rests. Now, when would you probably have a team of product owners? That's probably if we were doing a scaled agile project where the project was large enough where we needed multiple teams working on it instead of just one. And we'll actually revisit this topic when we get into the lesson on scaling agile. So the answer is, could you have a team of product owners? Yes. Ideally, you would want to have one product owner for each team, or a maximum of a product owner working with two separate teams. But again, preference would be one, but depending on personnel and cost issues, maybe you split the product owner among two teams. Part-time product owner, kind of the same issue that we were dealing with when it came to the Scrum Master. So the idea is, a full-time product owner for one team as opposed to part-time or being split among teams. Remote product owner. Just like the Scrum Master situation, if you've got a distributed environment, the product owner has to be committed to being available as the team needs. Excuse me. So if I were the product owner, and those of you that are in India were part of the team over in India, and, you know, we're 11 and a half hours different, and, you know, it's 3 a.m. for me and I'm sound asleep, and it's 2:30 in the afternoon for you, and you've got a question about the user story that you're working on right then, I would need to be available. Now, of course, you know, we would structure things so if it's possible for things to be deferred to a more agreeable time, great. But my commitment as the product owner is I'm available when you need me. Okay, failure modes for the product owner position. Ineffective delegation making by the product owner. So if the product owner delegates decisions to a junior product owner, for example, and then that product owner, that junior product owner is going to have to get approvals or is being overridden by the chief product owner, you know, no, he shouldn't have given you the green light on that. No, that's not what that user story is about, or whatever. You can see that there would be, you know, some chaos, some confusion. You know, the team would be saying, well, who in the heck do we talk to get our questions answered? You tell us it's this person, but then you're forever, you know, overriding that person. Well, how would you resolve that kind of a situation? Well, one of the things is timing. And if a decision did need to be changed, wait until we get to the sprint review or the sprint planning to deal with it. Also, if you have a team of product owners, the chief product owner is going to have to be responsible for making sure that the product owner responsible for a portion of that product backlog fully understands those user stories and how those user stories fit into the bigger picture. The product owner pushing the team too hard, not an uncommon scenario. Product owner wants the project to be successful, done as quickly as possible. Well, what could happen is if the product owner keeps pushing the team and the team yields to that, the team could get burned out, or it would compromise team self-organization. You know, if the team says, you know, we can do, you know, 20 story points in a sprint, and the product owner convinces the team to take on 25, you know, the team has just been overridden. The product owner tells the team, no, you can do more than what you say you can do, and robs the team of that self-organization. And, you know, the team you would think it would be accurate, because based on the previous sprint, the team knows how many story points it can actually do. And just because the product owner says the team needs to do better doesn't mean that that's possible. So how do you resolve a situation like that? We actually already talked about this. The Scrum Master would probably have to have some conversations with the product owner and explain how it's supposed to work in Scrum and protect the team. Now, if there were some legitimate issues like, maybe, the end users or the customers or the suits interject something into the project and the product owner is in a bad spot, team, I don't know what to do. I have to have this user story done, and you're telling me that you got to do these other things first before we can do that user story, and you don't have the capacity to do it. I don't know what to do. So that's legitimate, right? That's not just an over-eager product owner. Well, the Scrum Master might then get everybody together and facilitate a brainstorming session to come up with ideas. And maybe, that new user story with demands, maybe a portion of it could be done, or, maybe some other solution emerges, but again, it's still got consensus as the objective. And you could see how with a good Scrum Master saying, hey, team, this isn't the product owner just being a jerk here. The product owner is being, he's got some demands being placed on him by the marketplace or by the suits or whatever, and the product owner understands that you don't have the capacity to do everything that the product owner needs to get done right now. So let's come together and let's see if we can come up with some ideas that would be the best choice here. And then the last item here is the product owner who's saying, you know what, just get it done. Skip the testing on this sprint, or just do half the testing, or whatever. Will you forget about the design? Just let that emerge. Just start getting me some software. Well, eventually that's going to be disastrous. It could even result in the full failure of the product. And if not that bad, it's going to impact the team's velocity in a negative way. Velocity, by the way, is capacity. And when it comes to a resolution to that, the Scrum Master has to get involved and say, remember, our job as a Scrum Master is to also assist the product owner in being successful. And so doing some coaching with the product owner and pointing out that, if you keep going the way you're going, the product's going to fail. Something bad is going to happen. And so, let's figure out how to make sure we keep quality built into our project here.